Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. We're back again with another episode of Fridays with Flo. And today we're going to be talking about how to prepare your home for the spring market. In 2026, we have to think a little differently. For the last couple episodes of this segment, we've been talking a lot about positioning your home in the best way to sell quickly, right? It's a buyer's market. And in some areas, it's what we call a balanced market, which means sellers are winning in some areas and buyers are winning in some areas. But I really think for sellers, you're really going to position your home to sell better if you price the home right the first time. Lots of things that come with that because we do have picky buyers walking around right now. I hear them all the time over the smallest things, the refrigerator, the yard has too many trees, some things that we can control and other things that we cannot control. So the number one thing that sellers can do to prepare their homes for this market, the spring market precisely, is positioning your home to sell within the first 7 days. This is a key critical aspect of selling a home because oftentimes people may plan given the data, right? We expect that homes are going to take a little bit longer to be on the market. And so we think, okay, well, I'm okay if it doesn't sell within 30 days, So we kind of think like that. However, buyers start to question why it's still on the market. They think maybe there's something wrong, Granted, we know that we're just waiting for the right buyer to come along. However, the average buyer might think, if it didn't sell within the first few weeks, then maybe there's something else that's causing that. When we're preparing to sell the home, we definitely want to go all in within the first 7 days, really. So that means not only did we do the work ahead of time, such as having our professional photos, we already did the pre-inspection, we did the pressure washing, uplifting the curb appeal, then we get our professional photos and measurements and we go live on the market. But then maybe we're also going to schedule an open house that first weekend. In some scenarios, the home may go off market and sell or under contract before the open house date even arrives. That's great news. That's amazing news. And that's what we hope for. However, we want to be able to get as many people in the home to view it in the best position within the first 7 days. And so we're going to plan the open house the first weekend that it's live. We're going to, partner with a mortgage lender who's going to be available on site at the open house to speak about some financing opportunities. The biggest barrier for any home buyer is understanding the finances, right? Not only is the list price something that they're considering, but also how can they afford it? What will this monthly payment look like for them? What does that look like in addition to the HOA fee, other maintenance fees? Taxes have increased across many areas. So increased taxes means a shift in their impending mortgage payments as well. So having somebody on site to help the buyer understand that, including any incentives that the mortgage lender is able to offer that home buyer to understand, hey, we're actually offering a $5,000 grant towards this. Now, this is not even something that the seller has to come out of pocket with. That's great news for them. So definitely going all in for the home within the first week of the home being on the market and not really trying to do things after it's been on the market and it's not selling. Granted, the home will still sell, eventually, but you want to go all in at the beginning. I've seen homes on the market and then after 3 months or so, that's when they decide, you know what, we should have staged it. Let's stage it so that the buyers can see the vision, right? Because maybe they're going to start getting feedback that the buyers think the dining room's too small. The buyers think that, the bedroom's too small. And then if you had it staged at the beginning, they're able to see, oh, this is not too bad. One of the things that I want folks to understand is how you can stage the home ahead of time, because I end up getting people who stage homes afterwards. The second thing that I want folks to think about when you're trying to prepare to sell your home in the spring market is pre-market inspections. Now, most sellers don't do this. And that's because it's an extra expense up front, right? The buyer's going to get their home inspection anyway. So now you as a seller are going to get a pre-market inspection so that what's happening in the house before the buyer does. Now, the reason why pre-home inspections mean power for the seller is because if you already know what's going on in the house, you can probably get ahead of those things and start fixing them. Anything major, right? You can start making those adjustments because what happens is the buyer goes in, and I know this because even the buyer agent goes in expecting to go under contract with a certain price. And we talked about this at last Friday's episode as well. We go in under contract for, let's just say 400,000, right? And so we have these agreed terms, but after the home inspection, now we're talking about another price reduction or additional seller concessions for the buyer because now some items that came up on the home inspection are now setting the buyer to feel fearful or concerned, and they want some sort of compensation for their emotions or compensation towards fixing those things either at closing or after closing. Sometimes the buyer might need those items to be fixed before they close on the home. They don't want to have to worry about it after we close. And then sometimes they'll say, hey, give us an additional credit. Either way, that is now eating into your seller net profit. This is an opportunity for you to get your pre-home inspection and not have to worry about what the buyer's going to bring up afterward. All right. Third thing that a seller can do to position your home in the spring market would be micro upgrades that can actually move the needle. And by micro upgrades, we mean small things like light fixtures, things that can actually improve the buyer's impression, right? Sometimes they walk into the home and, the outside looks great. We can see the curb appeal. We can see the square footage and the great yard and everything, but we're too busy focused on the light fixtures and how outdated they are. I think the older lights are called booby lights or something, So those types of outdated light fixtures can shift a little bit, and immediately somebody views the home as outdated. And so they view that as less in value. And so they take that as an opportunity. Surely the seller has to be willing to negotiate on this price because it's not as updated and whatnot. So micro upgrades, even changing out the doorknobs from the gold older ones, outdated ones, into the more like a brushed nickel or the matte black options, those can quickly uplift the home pretty easy. So light fixtures, doorknobs, those are simple things you can do that are called micro upgrades to improve the value of the home as well, right? So the fourth thing that a seller can do to position their home for the spring market would be the spring curb appeal. All right. The spring curb appeal allows a more emotional hook for the buyer. And so what I mean by that is the minute we drive up to the home, we're already seeing beautiful flowers on the front porch steps or, a beautiful wreath on the door. I mean, all of that is this, a lot of emotions are happening immediately. We walk in and we're smiling because everything looks great, right? From just driving up to the house, it makes a difference. I know it makes a difference. I showed a home last weekend where they actually had fake plants outside the front porch steps, and they just looked beautiful. They just looked stunning, even though it's still relatively cold here in the March, winter, spring North Carolina market. And I knew that they couldn't have been real because it hasn't been warm long enough for flowers to bloom and whatnot, but they just added an extra level of vibrant hook to the house, And as soon as we walked into that house, it smelled amazing. It was clean and there was no clutter. There was no furniture. It was completely empty, but we can tell that they put some light air freshener in there. So again, the psychological impact of what a good scent does to a buyer or anybody that walks into a home, that's going to make a difference into how the buyer is going to view and perceive the home the minute they walk in, right? So not only from when we drive up to the house and park, but also as soon as we walk inside the house. So those are small things that can help improve the emotional hook for a buyer. And so that's going to leave kind of an impression for the buyer to decide, you know what, I think I want to offer on this one. So, I mean, the rest of the house is great as far as floor plans and square footage and number of bedrooms and bathrooms and all that stuff. But that feeling that you get, that all makes a huge difference to drive the buyer's decision to submit an offer, right? And those are things that we invest in at the beginning of going on the market versus waiting later down the line. You've missed the large pool of your possible buyers. You've missed them the first few weeks. Home gets the most traffic within the first week or two. of the home going on the market. After that, it kind of slows down and dies down. The very last thing, the fifth thing that a seller can do to position their home for the spring market would be timing the market appropriately. And what I mean by that is we always say the best time to go live on the market is the spring, right? That's peak buyer demand. Most buyers, their lease ends in June for a variety of reasons, right? Whether it's their kids in school or they finished grad school or undergrad, and then that's when they got their first apartment or first rental. And so that summer time frame is a very popular time frame for people's lease to end. And if they have a family, they're definitely not wanting to move until the school year ends for their family to be able to move somewhere else, and new zoning, new school districts, all that sort of stuff. That being said, spring is a very high demand time so people can secure and lock in their plans before the summer really hits here. The other piece to timing your home on the market is also what day it goes live on the market. Thursdays are the best days for a home to go live on the market. That's just statistics, that's data. And that's because typically if a home goes live on the market on Thursday, people notice it, they're excited, it's a new listing, let's go check it out. And we're gonna schedule to look at it on Saturday or Sunday. Like, people are starting to build up their weekend plans. I know that as a buyer agent, when I go show properties to my buyers, we're typically out there looking at 4 or 5 homes sometimes, which is a lot. After 5 homes, it starts to get blurred. We can't remember which is which and where was what. But I typically cap my buyers at 5. That way we know we've selected our top 4 or top 5 to view. But we look at all of those one day during the weekend, right? But we plan that very early and during the week and no later than Thursday, right? So new listings that come up, they're gonna be something hot to go look at during that weekend. That being said, if you have an open house scheduled that Saturday and you were live on the market on Thursday, just 2 days prior, that's also going to be a reason for more buyers to come out because it's a fresh new listing. There's an open house this week and let's plan to go. So timing means everything. And aligning with buyer activity also means everything. If you can control it, don't go live on the market in the winter. That's if you can control it. Now, if life circumstances are, hey, we've got to move and the time that we have to move happens to be December, then so be it, right? Homes are still going to sell in December. We still sell houses in November and December, Christmas Day, New Year's Day. We still sell homes, but the activity is a lot less. Most people are like, hey, we're kind of settled until the new year. Once we get into that holiday season, people are traveling to spend time with family. They're hosting, with family, holiday memories, all that sort of stuff. Timing and strategy means everything. So those are our top 5 things that a seller can do to prepare their home for the spring market, the spring 2026 market. So if there's anything that you guys have questions about, I'd love to hear from you guys. Feel free to comment, like, and subscribe if you're tuning in from YouTube. And I want to hear from you guys. What are some of these things that kind of caught your eye, stood out to you? Ask any questions about them. All right. Tune in next Friday for our next episode. All right. See y'all. Bye.